Hello, everyone. This is Aaron Stillwell. I'd like to thank, and we have the honor to welcome Chuck Brooks to our LinkedIn Live Advanced Persistent Threat and Cybersecurity Group. Chuck is the CEO of Brooks Consulting and adjunct professor at Georgetown University, and he is author of the book Inside Cyber: How AI, 5G, IoT, and quantum computing will transform privacy and our security. Chuck has briefed the G20 on energy cybersecurity, the U.S. Embassy and Vatican on global cybersecurity cooperation, and has received presidential appointments by two U.S. presidents. Chuck, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you. We also have helping us hosts, we have Tammy Klotz. Tammy is the Chief Information Security Officer at Trinseo and author of the book Leading with Empathy and Grace: Secrets to Developing High Performance Teams. And then we have Alex Mavro, Security Manager at Getronics. Both of you, thank you so much for joining and helping me host.
Thank you.
Excellent. It's great to be here, Aaron. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. So this event will be recorded on LinkedIn for future access. So if you want to be able to forward that to anybody, you can. I think they keep it up for at least 6 months to a year, which is nice. If you have any questions, please add comments on the LinkedIn page. And Alex and I will kind of keep an eye on it. And then during the talk, what we'll do is we'll kind of keep it open and then we'll answer those for you. So today's topic is on the influence of emerging technologies on the cybersecurity landscape, right? So, Chuck, in your past interview, you mentioned, rapid technological progress is what the near future holds. Can you kind of mind explaining that kind of a little more in detail on how you see that?
Sure. I think it's been a gradual climb, but when we hit COVID, we all started to go more digital, and everything was done, in communication. All our work is digital. So, what that means is that in the last few years, technologies have been used to impact the way we communicate, primarily, but also the way we analyze and do things, and particularly artificial intelligence. You can call it machine learning, generative AI. Has been used to augment our capabilities, which means quicker synthesis of data, understanding of it, basically better efficiency in architecture of algorithms. Everything you could think of that connects to the internet has been impacted by this new digital era. We've really switched now fully into the 4.0 era, where we see the sort of the merging in the physical to the machine. We're not quite there to the sentient, although SoftBank head of it today came out and said by 2035 he expects to have sentient AI. So we're moving very fast, and so this rapid technological progress is really just a new era. As an era that we're all connected very closely, and it's just one of the technologies that's impacting it.
So do you think SoftBank could reach that at 2035?
I've talked to people that say it's possible.
Wow.
I would think there's always skeptics, but I think I've spoken to people who've worked in a lot of these data sets, and they say that they're really getting close to reasoning. Google came out and said their ability to reason AI is there now. So I don't doubt them, and I think if we do get to quantum era too, I think that will definitely accelerate it. So I think it's quite possible. Remember the movie 2001? We thought we'd be here already, but we're not, and there's no Hell 2001 yet. But there will be probably by at least 2040, 45, if we're going to reach the 2035 point. So I think it's not science fiction anymore. I think if you look at the government and look at how DARPA used to approach things 20, 25 years out, looking really almost what was just on the edge of technology. They're looking now at near-term things, and near-term things involve all this. And so nothing's really beyond our reach anymore. And so it's going to be exciting a few decades ahead.
Fantastic. So let's discuss, in your book, we talk about the kind of emerging technologies impacting the government and the commercial marketplace. And you have a list, everything from digital transformation, cybersecurity, AI, IoT, wireless networks. Is it okay if we kind of touch on some of these, right? And then kind of, I would love to get your thoughts on these new
Absolutely.
emerging technologies and how
Yeah.
they impact, each one, right? And then Tammy and Alex, please definitely chime in. If you have questions, we'll kind of keep it totally open. Yeah, and then you know what? Let's touch off with digital transformation. Where do you see the impact with that, with both government and commercial?
Yeah, well, we've been seeing it for a while. I mean, the whole digital service is a result of digital transformation in government, and it's automated processing, which we've seen. You've seen a lot of the blockchain now being implemented in some of these for ledgers and in government too, and in the private sector too. But digital transformation is not just the technology; it's the people and the processes. And Tammy can speak more about that part about the people. But you really have to adapt to change in the workplace and a lot of the menial jobs, and I wouldn't call them menial, but maybe low tech jobs are being replaced by robotic process automation that we don't have to utilize people for anymore. So you're seeing a restructuring of the way business is being done in the private sector, and the way factories are being built with less people, with more automation. You look at Amazon, you see how they're able to basically take factories and use robotics and platforms to move things with less people. And you're seeing it also on the logistics side, with the knowing exactly where the product may be, where how long it'll take there to get there, what any blockage will be, or everything. So you really have basically a different way of doing business and a different way of doing citizen engagement now in government because of this transformation.
So Tammy, where have you seen on your side the digital transformation that has changed within your industry?
Yeah, so I think there's in the manufacturing space, right? It's ripe for opportunity with digital transformation. How do you automate the tasks that are happening on the manufacturing floor such that you can produce product faster and more reduce your time to market along those lines. So, when you think about it in those terms and the transformation that needs to happen and potentially the retooling of the individual who once was operating the machine that is now either monitoring or interpreting the results of the data that come from that machine, bringing that to bear so that you are capitalizing on the knowledge of those individuals and not lose that as it pertains to the specialty of the product that you're making, but then removing the less value add work from them so that they can focus on other more important and other tasks, right? So I think part of that comes in with the whole retooling component of the people side of it, as Chuck said, and how do we capitalize on their capabilities, right? So taking out those less value add, more manual activities from them and allowing them to excel in other areas within that digital transformation space.
Yeah, that's great. Alex, I could definitely let you chime in with some of the customers you're working in.
Sorry.
I could definitely let you chime in if you want on the customers you're working with right now.
Yeah. I have some questions for you, Chuck. Of course, those are different from point of view. For first of the questions, we have seen a lot of info about data compromise or data leakage and others. How can CISO protect this, and what data protection measures can be put in place? I know
Yeah.
it's tough.
It's very tough, and I think you've started to see it over the last few years. And you're right. I mean, the internet was not built for security. That's the bottom line, and everything attached to it is sort of a bolt-on right now. And what we need to do. So, a couple of years ago, they pursued a policy, a CISA of zero trust for all government agencies, which is now being implemented. Which we basically means you need to know what's in your network, what device, what people, who has access, who has administrative access. And actually goes down now to sort of the data letter to what kind of data is in your there too, because you can have bad data. So I think it's a right step in the right direction, and it's actually this whole zero trust is permeated over to the private sector too, where a lot of companies realizing, particularly the larger ones, realizing they need these processes in, and they've been implemented. The second thing that CISA has done, and this is not new, but it's the first really policy formulation to make sure that it is implemented was security by design. And the problem is that we operate on a lot of legacy systems, particularly in government, some large ones, and they were not built again with security in mind. And so the whole idea is now that we transfer into a new technological realm, all our critical, be energy or finance or health or wherever, is that everything new that we construct needs to be designed with cybersecurity and physical security in mind. And so these processes are not being put. So it won't be in a situation where we have to put on, follow what we had been doing, which is defense in depth, which is really adding on devices and policies, et cetera, to try and bolster security. Having said all that, it's still asymmetrical. The adversary, the hackers, have an advantage because the weakest link is still the human. And most breaches are still done through phishing. And people have a tendency to open up any link, and no matter how much training. So it really goes down to actually also using cyber hygiene and having multi-factor authentication, strong passwords, secured routers, not operating in unsecured Wi-Fi, etc. So it's really a holistic approach to this, and it's going to take time because we're moving so fast, and so many small and medium businesses don't have any expertise or any strategies or framework in place that it's going to be catch up. And until then, they're just low-hanging fruit for the hackers. And they're particularly going after healthcare. Because most healthcare organizations in the past have put most of their money into medical devices and people. And now they have to also boast of their security in their various networks. So, it's not going to be easy. So, CISO's doing a good job and they're trying, but, it's a whole world out there. And it's not just, and then I want to say I'd be negligent if I didn't say the weakest link, second weakest link is probably the supply chain, because aside from people, you may have many vendors or people in the supply chain, and each vendor poses a risk. And they're going to go with the vendor, the small business, or whoever that no protection and it can poison everything. So it's a real, it's a continuous improvement. Encryption, all these things are necessary to try and bolster our security in these very precarious times.
You have mentioned about zero trust, and here I would like to ask, how can organizations better safeguard their sensitive information? And what I mean here, can be integrated zero trust for any type of company?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'd say is they first have to identify what their sensitive information is, and that starts with this cybersecurity risk management strategy. And once you identify, know where then you have to look at your vulnerabilities, perhaps doing a penetration test or bringing an outside managed service to check it all. Then you really have to, go through the implementation of knowing who's in your network, why they're in network, what kind of administrative privileges they have, and then you have to go about doing that. But how they do it is really dependent upon what kind of business they are and how small or big they are. And luckily, NIST, Standards Organizations, puts out a lot of risk management frameworks that could be adopted. So I think it's doable. And, the other thing is that, there are some simple things you can do. One, if you want to protect the information, you should segment it, don't have your really valuable information part of the network if you really need it, and have backups. You'd be surprised how few companies have backups. And the second thing is what I mentioned a little earlier is encryption, because encryption does make it a little more difficult, and until quantum comes along, most of the hackers are not going to be able to use that information. And so you may want it back, but if you have a backup, it doesn't do them any good if they can't open it. So I would say those simple steps are definitely viable, and most people can do it, and they're not costly to do either.
Yeah. Okay, I will address another question, then I will let Tammy to address the next question. The next question from my side, you have mentioned about supply chain risk, and over here I have a question in regards with this. What should a CISO do if the supply chain risk continues to increase? Should we trust the ISO 27001? Why I'm asking, because some info from other experts in the field contradicted with NIST, and we have seen very, very often in the last 2 years this kind of info where they are contradicting all the time. in terms of the let's say requirements, in terms of how they have to act and how they have to perform those gaps.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just said that the last part is exactly right. I mean, if you're going to be in a supply chain and you're managing it, if you're the prime company, you have to set the policies up front with those vendors, anyone in the supply chain, and they have to adhere to your basically the visibility, so that you have transparency into everything they do. You may have requirements that they need to use encryption, which you might want to implement, and you also have to have legal strengths. You have to put some incentives in there, or punishment sometimes, to see if they violate. And because a lot of smaller businesses will just neglect it and say, okay, I've got this and I don't need to do it. But it's really up to the prime and say, if you want a part of this business, you have to do this, and then you really have to verify it. You can't just trust.
I was going to ask, do you think it's a question of just cost
Yeah.
for these small organizations?
It's a huge cost
Yeah,
issue,
when you have to
and some of the
implement
bigger ones right now are helping with that verification and assisting and putting the right kind of processes and policies, and whether they use certain encryption, who has access, and looking at all these different elements that may be seen as gaps in the risk process for a thing. But it's a cost to also doing business, because if you do get breached, you're going to go out as a small business anyway. So you better be safe than sorry, and implement it. And if you look at what's going on now with DoD and the CMMC, which comes in the next quarter, they're requiring all these businesses now to have understanding of cybersecurity and understand the basic needs and requirements to keep your supply chain secure, your business secure. And I think it's just going to be the reality in this. We're talking about the digital transformation era. You have to be, security has to be more than just something you just check off the box anymore. It's really consideration or viability as a company, and you need to really put serious resources in it when you're building it. So it's not going to come back and haunt you later. And so I mean, I think that's a change in the paradigm right now, because most companies have always looked at security as a cost item, just like IT, whatever. But really, it needs to be brought up. And if you're doing business with someone, particularly if you're a manufacturer and you have a long supply chain, you want to know that all your partners are secure, or you're going to go to someone else. So it really means a lot. It factors on reputation, and it should be stressed in every relationship. And so I'm hoping that's going to be more the case. It's an uphill climb, but people have to do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
So, Aaron, if I could just add a couple of thoughts based upon the dialogue that we were just having. So one of the things that Chuck offered was with regards to, focusing on the people side of it. So I'll come back in on that. And one of the things that I do is I try to shift the paradigm, and Chuck also made reference to that. But rather than emphasizing that your human beings typically are your weakest link in your cybersecurity protection strategy, one of the things that I do within the organizations that I lead from a cyber perspective is really to flip that on its head, and focus on making the employees the strongest link in the protection strategy, like spending the additional time on training and awareness, making them aware of what the possibilities are that could happen, and then also, demonstrating with real life examples the different types of things that do occur in the organization, so that they, can be made aware. And then kind of the corollary to that is that, this all happens internally within your organization, but it's also very transferable to individuals outside of their work life, their professional life. It definitely is something that they encounter in their personal lives. So make it personal for them so that they can take it home to their families, to their children, to their parents who may not be as technically savvy, but it's relatable to them, and the impact is different because it's a personal impact at that point in time. So I do believe there's a lot of power that can come from really focusing on the training and awareness of your employee base to make them the strongest link. And the other comment I wanted to make was really around the supply chain that we were just talking about, right? As a CISO for a manufacturing organization, over the past 10 years, it's definitely, understanding where you are in your customer's supply chain is just as important as you protecting your own supply chain, right? So, you're going to be asking your vendors, your suppliers, certain questions around how are they protecting their supply chain and their production operations. At the same time, they're going to come back, your customers are going to come back and ask you the exact same questions. So you need to make sure that you're prepared and positioned to be able to provide them the assurances that says, we have a plan, we have a program, and acknowledging that to your customers so that they can depend on you from a delivery of, for us, with regards to raw materials to make the end product that are required, right? So it's a two-way street from that perspective, and making sure that you can answer the same questions that you are asking of your suppliers is extremely important.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's great advice. I'm a big proponent of cybersecurity awareness training and gamification, simulation, whatever you can do. The more you can educate, the better, obviously. The other thing is, you do have to have transparency into your vendors, and it is a two-way street, and it really becomes sort of a family when you do it that way. It's more difficult on bigger supply chains, but with most companies are smaller. I mean, small and medium business is really the backbone of most companies in America, and that's doable. So I think that's really a good point. And the other thing I think really now we have to look at is that despite all the things you can do and put in place, there's still a strong likelihood that you're going to get breached. And resilience and incident response are just as integral nowadays as anything else. So if you go as a company and assume you're going to get breached, you should have a plan to mitigate it. You should have backup. You should have training and that too. And you should have a reputational awareness, particularly if you're a public company. But you should also have a chain of command set up who does what, because it's happening to the largest companies regularly. It just changed healthcare with 100 million people just recently. So, I mean, and you saw with CrowdStrike, which wasn't even a cyber incident, was an IT incident. The implications are so huge and has so much of a financial implication. I think that every company, small, big, and large, has to have some sort of a resilience plan in place.
Yeah, I was going to mention my brother works with a lot of small businesses, but a lot of these small businesses, they're working with sometimes very large customers, and the first thing, he always says when he walks in is, he's spending a lot of time educating them on the risks of cybersecurity, and sometimes they have no idea,
Right.
and they are directly connecting with these large networks and sharing information, but at the core, their networks and everything is totally open, and they actually have absolutely no protection whatsoever. So, it's a lesson learned. You're right. I think at these small businesses and medium-sized businesses, to ensure that they have the necessary tools and education and security in the background before they start doing business and communicating with these large organizations, because that is a massive weak point.
I think over here, Aaron, I think most of the small companies have this issue. As far as I can see in Europe, I don't know in the USA, but mostly in the Europe where I have traveled, I have seen a lot of issues for the small companies. For the medium companies, they are trying their best to achieve what the enterprise or corporate companies they have. And this can be seen very, very often. I have seen even a company from Romania who was a small company and now becomes a medium company due to the large infrastructure, the large employees that they have hired, and so many projects, of course, in terms of security and development as well, because the company is mostly into the development field. And they are trying their best to achieve what the corporate companies have already, maybe more than 10 years or more than 20 years. But it's good. It's on a let's say on a line which is increasing, not as it should be. Of course, maybe it can be better, but all the time you have to do step by step, because if you try to improve in different projects. Let's say you have something on the identity access management, and then you have something that you have to put in place, and then you have to put in place as well privileged access management solution, or you have to put in place other type of solutions like EDR, NDR. you cannot put all the same all the projects in place in the same time. I mean, no one can do that. If you will do that, maybe you might crash the business continuity, and that's one of the main important thing for a company to develop, to bring money, of course, and based on those money to put them on different projects in order to have a better security.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the real issue that is a global issue. You're right. Is that
Yeah.
small and medium businesses are competing, or not competing, are defending themselves against state-sponsored hackers, and they're doing it, and they're basically their cohorts, which are basically organized criminal elements that they sponsor, which are highly trained and highly paid groups. So they're at a disadvantage already in capabilities and technology. So if people are looking at trends, I think it's just almost impossible. Like you said, a lot of these companies you go to don't, like you're saying, have no idea what cybersecurity is. I think eventually the government is going to have to step up its public-private cooperation. They're doing with critical infrastructure right now with really like energy and places like that. But it's going to have to extend to small and medium businesses because they cannot beat the threats that are out there, particularly with artificial intelligence right now, where they can do automated phishing and go after millions of accounts at once. It's just too steep a path to go for them to do that. So the only advice I have for them is just try and make themselves less of a target. You put the basics in, put the hygiene in, and they're going to go. Usually, hackers go to the most easy target. So so it's a problematic issue. But I think we have to recognize it now that a lot of the kinetic warfare and the geopolitical implications that were in the past now are moving to the digital realm, and everyone is a target. It's not just military or that. They're going after small water plants in the United States. They're going after anyone that's healthcare, particularly educational institutions, and everyone's a target. In manufacturing, as you mentioned too, which is one of the largest targeted areas of cybercrime. So it is criminal enterprise, and you're fighting very well trained people.
This is actually a good segue into, because you just mentioned artificial intelligence. Everyone, excuse me, we always get these questions nonstop. And I know it's a very kind of hot topic right now, and every marketing company is using it for every single product right now. But Chuck, I'd love to get your thoughts on where you see, from the side of the AI and the machine learning, how do you see that impacting, again, the federal side, and then I guess, Tammy, too, you could talk about the commercial side. That'd be fantastic.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think just on both sides, there's a huge cybersecurity expert shortage. There has been for many years, and it's not improving despite all efforts. So I think where AI immediately helps is some of the activities that are being done, some of the lesser activities can be done automated through artificial intelligence, and that's a given. But then there's other aspects too. Let's say you have a security operations center. A lot of the time of the operators is spent writing reports, right? And hours a day. And so now with generative AI, they're able to do these reports in minutes rather than hours. So that's another place where it's impacting. Threat intelligence is probably the most logical place where it's definitely, because you have a lot of new threats too, and you're able to synthesize a lot of the data sets that are coming in. So you're able to identify them quicker. And then AI can also help reduce the false positive, which is another huge problem with any CISO can tell you, is that they get a lot of false attacks, and this takes time to figure out whether it's a legitimate thing, what you have to do, and it's taking up the time of the few analysts they have, or operators. So I think in those end alone, I think AI is helping things, and it's interesting to see where government's going. Department of Defense, Treasury, I think Commerce even too, and DHS have created a chief artificial intelligence officer roles. And so it's not just for cybersecurity, but it's also for efficiency, operational. It's all about data, really. Making sure you get the best data in the quickest way possible. But all this is going to evolve more and more, and a lot of these policies from Zero Trust and Security by Design are going to be integrated into these algorithms, and they're already being used, for monitoring, and a lot of the stuff done at DHS, which is The real-time monitoring is now assisted by AI. So you're seeing it already, and you're also seeing it from the adversaries. I said earlier that they're doing a lot of automated phishing attack. Now anyone can go to the dark web and get a ransomware kit and use generative AI to write scripts, and all of a sudden you're hitting a lot of people with it. So it works both ways. Technology is only a tool, but you have to understand the technology, how to best use it. And I think we're going in the right direction, and that's what government is doing. And Tammy could probably speak more about what she sees in the private sector.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I use when we start talking about AI, right? It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So we need to figure out how we're going to deal with it, right? It's just the new next thing, right? The internet started, and we had to figure out how we were going to interwork that into our, daily work habits and environments. And AI is going to bring the same things. And, with any new technology, there's a good way to use it and there's a not so good way to use it. So Chuck already alluded to, how it can improve your security operations from an automation perspective. But at the same time, others will use it to their benefit, which would be potentially harmful to those of us who are the consumers of that, and then be affected by, kind of the outcomes of an AI solution from an attack or something like that. So it's you don't want to impede the use of it. I think that's one of the challenges from a security professional perspective, is that, I got the question early on, like, are we going to block ChatGPT? And my answer was no, we're not going to do that. And some people were like, what? And I'm like, look, we can either, pretend it doesn't exist and not allow it. And people are just going to figure out another way to do it, right? Just like you tell your kids no, they're going to find out the next way that they can get it done some other way, right? So people go home and you use ChatGPT on their personal computers, and then you lose even more control over what's happening and how your
right.
is being shared, right? And what AI will bring to a lot of organization is the structure around the data governance that's required, right? As we look at the use of Copilot across our organizations, if your data is not protected properly, you're very quickly going to discover where you have exposure, whether it's in unstructured data stores and SharePoints and things like that. So figuring out where your data is, what those critical elements are, how you're going to protect it, those are the things that you want to make sure that you're thinking about for your organizations, to keep that intellectual property secured where those crown jewels are. And then, really, again, focused on what are people doing with that data that do have access to it.
Yeah, I think there is already tools out there that are integrating with Copilot that provide restrictions to data, and they're looking at the data and making sure people are not accessing data they shouldn't be accessing, which I find is pretty cool.
Yeah. You're seeing a lot of competition out in the marketplace for a lot of generative AI, and it's moving very fast. You can see where the money's, the billions and billions of dollars being in it. So it's out of the future, and you're seeing artificial intelligent agents, which is really the next step with beyond avatars to really shape our activities. So it is moving in quite a fast way, and I think that Europe, when they came out last year with sort of a governance model, and we just came out with one recently last week, I think, with the White House. We're looking at it, at least. We didn't do that for cybersecurity for 10 years, so at least we're looking at it, and so that's encouraging. But again, I think we're gonna, it's gonna be AI is again, how are you going to use it best for your organization, and certainly there's going to be a lot of products and a lot of offerings that you'll probably need an expert to decide where and how you use it.
So another one I'd like to cover, both Chuck and Tammy, you probably know this one, Tammy, you definitely know very well, is cloud and edge computing. Where do you see emerging technology within, again, we're talking about the federal and commercial space. Do you see advancements in that?
Tammy, you can go first on this answer.
Yeah. So, Chuck talked about zero trust technologies, and how are you focused on protecting your organization as more and more stuff moves to the cloud, right? And I think what you'll see happening is kind of the shift in where the perimeter lies, right? So we've kind of moved beyond the network being the perimeter and very much shifted to an identity focused perimeter, making sure that the identities, whether machine identities or people identities, are properly protected. And we had references to, what are we doing from an identity and access management perspective? What about privileged access? How are you handling elevated access in special cases? So a lot of that focus is, as you move to the cloud, is that shift to focus on the identity and making sure that individuals only have access to the information that they're supposed to, which is not a new thing. We've been talking about least privilege management for a long time. It's just now it's changed. It's to morph as things are moving to the cloud. And we'll talk about, we talked about vendors, and as data is moving to the cloud, where are the boundaries? It's still your organization's data. Your organization still own that, but you're transferring some of the risk of how that data is actually handled when you're using third and fourth parties in a cloud type environment, and making sure those shared responsibilities are understood. And honestly, as you work with your business partners in your organization, making sure the recognition of, we're moving to a full SaaS solution, for example, does not, relinquish your responsibilities to that data, to that provider. You need to make sure that, you're still contractually reviewing how that data is being protected, if the vendor has the right controls in place. So, it's a different way of doing business, and it has different controls that we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing a lot of what are called hybrid clouds, where a lot of businesses want to control some of their data on premises, but they're okay with giving a lot of their maybe less sensitive information and put it up and give it to a vendor who will protect it. But I think cloud has been there for a while. I mean, there's been in government, and it's the same thing. It's been slow to move, but they move in certain areas pretty quickly. I think that the issue again is who controls the data and how secure it is. We're talking about small and medium businesses, and I think this is probably the best way they can right now secure their data if they don't have expertise. If they find a viable cloud provider that offers the right encryption, security, segmentation, or whatever their data, they're a couple steps ahead of if something does happen. Again, that you're giving up your a lot of your security and you're sharing your data, but it's a good trade-off for most small business companies. And I think we are moving further and further away from the network. Our phones now are attached to us. Everyone operates 24/7 with a phone next to them, and eventually it's going to be in us. So it'll be our contacts, our glasses, and then it'll be in us. We'll be half computers. So I think we're moving in a fast way.
I've already been augmented, by the way. So hasn't the federal government has been initiatives to push for the cloud? There's been a lot of that.
There has been lots of initiatives. I mean, again, you're dealing with a lot of legacy systems, and it's not that easy to transfer a lot of the data. And also, there's business interests too, because a lot of the companies that have the contracts, they're multi-million-dollar contracts over years, and they're reluctant to give that up, and they want to hold it and do things slow down. But I mean, there's a lot of reasons why data has not gone there, and then also there are some risks, and every agency is different in the way they treat their data. And I think with the SIPRNet and DoD and stuff, it's a little bit different. But most agencies aren't even necessarily sure, and I think the zero trust helped speed that along, where their data was being held and how it was being held. Some of them actually outsourced to other servers and stuff too, different agencies. So I think we're definitely moving there, because we just can't handle the volume of data and storage that's necessary. Information age we're in right now, it's just exponentially getting larger and larger every year. So I mean, I see the cloud is definitely pretty much the only alternative that clouds.
Well, you guys know the story of Microsoft looking to purchase 3 Mile Island, the nuclear power plant, and utilize it for,
Well, that's interesting too.
It shows that where it's moving with AI, cloud computing, everywhere else, where they're looking to invest that kind of money to restart, mothballed nuclear power plant.
I think it's not only Microsoft; it's also Nvidia as well. They
What
are
is?
looking for that.
Mhm.
Google as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So you're seeing resurgence of nuclear capability, which has been stalled for many decades. And you're right, because it's propelling the data centers, and we just don't have the power necessary to do that. And so you're going to see a growth of data centers exponentially in the next few years. And you also see, us revisiting nuclear.
So, Chuck, the next question I'd love to talk about is quantum computing. Kind of where do you see that leading kind of in the future that way?
Mhm.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I was doing research for my book, and a few years ago, everyone was saying quantum's 2 decades away, and so that was I looked at it. I had a course, and I still have the same course I wrote 5 years ago. It's called Disruptive Technologies and Organizational Management for Georgetown, and I was using all this data and stuff, and I said, I have to change all this. So I updated it this year, and I should probably update it every year because it moves so quickly. But quantum now is become a reality, and it's not just the quantum major computer with all the qubits and all that. The race to build it is. We have quantum algorithms already. We have photonic computing, which is quantum. The Chinese have demonstrated quantum entanglement. They've also done quantum communications to satellites. So quantum is here in some forms. It's not in the all-encompassing big supercomputer form which they're trying to build, but now they're saying it's much closer. That's within. You talk to IBM, you talk to Google and all these others. They say it's near, it's coming. So I think we'll get that point there, and that would be called Q Day, because when you have that capability, you're able to almost decrypt anything on the planet, and you're also able to compute almost hundreds of millions of times faster. So it's a race between the Chinese and the West, and this Q Day is hopefully the West will win. But you already see it at DoD requirement now, and not just DoD, it's DHS, it's all the federal government, for quantum resistant algorithms. And NIST is leading the charge on that. I think last week 12 new ones were submitted.
I saw that.
It'll be required now, and so the quantum era is here. It's not distant anymore, and I think that's just a lesson about our technology, is that it's not always it's basically a fusion of technologies that we have to look at. Artificial intelligence is helping in the modeling of some of these quantum computers, and when you get artificial intelligence and quantum capabilities together, you're going to have a super intelligence, which the SoftBank person referred to in 2035. But I think it's going to be a curve, just like everything else, and we'll learn more. But it's going to be very exciting to see, and it'll change the world. I mean, we're talking about artificial intelligence in every conference now, but in 5 years we'll be talking about quantum in every conference too.
Yeah, do we know what the qubit is right now? What it was, 8 or 10? What is the max? They're
no, I think they've gone way beyond that now. It depends who you listen to. Those press releases come out every other week. But again, I think that's people look at it that one type of computer, but quantum photonic computing is available now, and it's still the physics of it. It's still, you're dealing with particles instead of X's and O's, which you do classical computing. So there are different types of it, and there's also chemical computing too, and biological computing. So computing in itself is something to watch. It's going to really, now that we're in, it's not just a digital era; it's a computing era. So the way we're able to synthesize data and put analytics and predictive analytics together is going to change drastically in the next couple of years.
That's amazing.
I have a few questions about quantum computing, because I see we have a new topic on this. And first question: do you think quantum computing will help the cybersecurity experts to develop or secure the infrastructure? I mean, can be a helpful this, like for example, the AI.
Yeah, no, I think you'll be able to develop quantum encryption, right? And you'll be able to do some types of encryption and exponentially change the capabilities of it. Polymorphic encryption to make it almost impossible. You'll devise numbers that will be beyond encryption, decrypting. So it definitely will help it. Again, you have to look at quantum as a sort of an engine and tool. It's a much more powerful engine than we're known in most technologies, because it is really dealing with the new physics. But new physics gets comprehended more and adapted more and experimented more by universities and businesses and government. You're going to see a lot of applications that are done, and most of them are going to be basically, within 2 minutes you'll be able to devise a whole architecture that you would have taken you, weeks to devise, and combining with artificial intelligence. So I think, yes, it'll significantly impact the ability to defend ourselves, but again, the big threat is the decryption, because a lot of the data has already been stolen and it's out there, and they say that data is loyal, and they're right. It's a king of things, and so we have to be prepared, and the investment going into it by government now is much larger, and particularly the private sector is much larger, and it's not just the United States. Europe are very much involved in developing these technologies.
Chuck, do you think it'll go beyond nation states to where you'll get private organizations building these machines?
Well, you already have private organizations building photonic quantum computing machines, so you're out there already with that. But I think what will happen is it'll be more like the supercomputers are used now, where the government and public-private partnerships use them for research, and they'll be basically you plugged into it. If you're a company and it'll probably be a paying model, or it's a question of who controls it. And it's such a powerful technology that it probably will be the government that controls it.
Mm-hmm.
I might have another question in regards with quantum computing, and one of the questions was how can business prepare for the cybersecurity challenges posed by quantum computing, and then what factors or what strategic measures can ensure resilience against quantum threats?
Well,
maybe tough questions.
Yeah. The biggest thing they could do, and it's already out there, is adopt some of these NIST algorithms for making their data encrypted and resistant. There's already some pretty good. I mean, it's going to be able to decrypt the standard encryption. We use military grade encryption right now, but I've already seen some polymorphic models out there, encryption models that are almost impossible to decrypt and not costly. So I think business could use those too. I don't think it's going to be a slow adoption, because it's going to probably go to government and big companies first. But for right now, for small and medium businesses, if you look at some of the polymorphic encryption capabilities out there, they're pretty strong. And you're talking about millions and millions and millions of numbers to be able to get it decrypted. So I think that's something to do. The other thing they need to do is they need to educate themselves, not just on quantum, but all these emerging technologies that are now impacting the way they do business. So I think you have to look at they're slow to come to cybersecurity. They're going to be even slower to come to quantum logically, and they're slow to come to artificial. They're actually faster. Everyone's adopting some sort of, because of generative AI. Everyone likes the idea that they can write and create things. So a lot of small businesses are using AI, but I think quantum is going to be a little more complicated. So I think, but reading about it, going out and learning out, following the news on it. Every week there's something we could read. Read some of the technical publications like MIT, which are also available for lay people. All that stuff is important to understand what's coming down the pipeline.
Thank you.
Sure.
Tammy?
I don't know that I have anything really to add from a quantum perspective. I think, the time will tell us what we need to do and how we need to be prepared. I think the best thing that we can do right now is really, stay focused on, the the basic hygiene capabilities that we need to make sure are employed across our organizations. I had a session earlier today, and the tagline was "Be brilliant at the basics," and I think there's a lot that goes into that statement, honestly, because when new things emerge into our organizations or into the world, and we've got to really take advantage of these situations. It's if you don't have those basic hygiene pieces in place, that's not going to happen overnight, right? So make sure your investments in your hygiene, your MFAs, those types of things are well in place, so you're not scrambling on those basic things when the new stuff comes along and is disruptive.
Yeah. We talked about quantum computing. We talked about zero trust. What about OT, IoT? We didn't touch this topic. I know it's not something that is.
We could spend 3 hours talking about it.
Yeah.
And IoT.
Yeah.
I'll let Chuck and Tammy talk about both those.
Yeah.
But I know.
Well, I mean, the OT and IT have been here, and a lot of the operational technology for industrial systems is a different model for being security, right? You have different processes in authentication, etc. And now a lot of it has been mixed with IT, and you saw that. A good example is the Colonial Pipeline. When it was breached, they closed down the whole East Coast for oil supplies because they thought the OT was also breached. So you don't know. So these systems are mixed, and the way you're doing this now, I mean, there's a lot. I can say you can spend a long time, but the basics are that there's new risk management strategies for meshing these two, and they all come down to understanding what's in your network, what policies you need to follow, how they differ, and also the hardest part I think for OT is getting the right expertise, because there's a limited amount of people trained in OT out there, particularly in the energy world. I mean, they're always hunting for them, and so manufacturing is also OT. So that it's a. I'll let Tammy go a little bit more detail on that, but I think just like everything else, you have to look at it is where the gaps and risks are, and understand what you need to do to change, because they are being targeted, and when you look at critical infrastructure in general, it's mostly OT and IT. So it makes sense that we not neglect one or the other, that we look at it as a holistic way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of activity, right, with the concepts around IT and OT convergence. I think there's, the different tools that are now, trying to get into the OT security place. Folks who were not an OT security company now are now claiming to be OT security companies, right? And I think what ends up happening in a lot of these cases is, part of the success in convergence is really around making sure the difference in priorities are understood between IT and OT. Not all of the same techniques can be used in the OT organizations that we try to instill and use in the IT space, and bringing the organizations together to get a mutual understanding of what those requirements are and how we have to go about things differently across the two becomes extremely important, because you can still secure them, you just have to secure them differently. And that goes, from some of the simplest constructs of segmentation from a network perspective, what traffic is allowed to traverse through the OT network, what north and south versus east and west traffic is actually allowed, what needs to be used to be pulled into a data lake or into a data store on the enterprise side, so that you can do, predictive analysis and such. So it's really around, understanding those requirements. OT is always going to be focused on availability first, making sure those systems are up and running, so that product can continue to be made, specifically in manufacturing, so that there isn't a disruption in production operations. And then obviously on the IT side, it's much more focused on the confidentiality side of keeping data and individuals secure. So IT and OT is, one of my niche areas. I've been in manufacturing my entire career. So, it's definitely been a journey, and every company is at a different state of maturity in that space. But bringing the two organizations together to, come to a mutual understanding, I think think is first and foremost appropriate. And then to Chuck's point, the resource pool is, if it's constrained on an overall cyber perspective, it's even more constrained on the OT cybersecurity strategy. And I think the one thing that is missed oftentimes is that the folks who are working on the production floor and making product and running the process control systems, the amount of knowledge that team has with regards to the product and operations is sometimes, not recognized, not understood, not valued. But those individuals, are so strong in their knowledge base, and being able to bring them more into the security space and have them help figure out how is the best way to secure that. I think sometimes that's lost because so many folks from a IT security perspective are trying to force fit things that are not going to work in that OT environment. So, using your resources wisely becomes very important, and capitalizing on the skills that are available to you.
That's great, Tammy. Thank you. Chuck, you talked about, we looked through and I talk about wearables because you mentioned the glasses. I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts about the emerging tech for wearables and kind of where you see the future with that.
Yeah. Oh, you're already seeing it right now, particularly in the health arena. I mean, people are being monitored for their blood pressure, their glucose levels. You're seeing it in exercise, and you're seeing it also in the military conflict, where now people have controlling drones with basically an operational thing attached to their headset. So it's already here. The question is how far it will go. I think augmented reality that would be taking off a little bit faster than it is. But a lot of people use it, say they get headaches and it's just not comfortable and it's difficult. But I think as it gets more of a nanotech approach, and we get down to I've seen versions of the contacts and other things. People can actually do computing and look at things and augment things. I think you're going to see a lot like the sort of the Terminator approach, where everything is augmented through wearables. So it may be a better way to do it than have it inside you, right? To have it, control over it. So it's augmenting the human is definitely there, and you see it also with first responders now. A lot of the stuff they can measure what gas might be in the air, where there may be people with infrared on the glasses. So there's so many applications of it, and then of course the impetus for a lot of these new capabilities came from gaming industry, and so the gamers make really good hackers too, and really good defenders. So I think we have to look at the way we approach our workforce in the future with a lot of people that now are more tech savvy, rather than, and including the military, where you're seeing the conflicts with the drone warfare and the robots.
My son let me borrow his goggles once. For about 30 seconds, and I got a blinding headache. So I
it does.
I got to give him credit for it, but he loves it. But
I think if you grow up, it'll get better. I mean, I think the ergonomics of it will improve as we get to different materials and different testings.
I kind of love what they're doing too. With my daughter's legally blind, so the ability to augment some of the technologies they're utilizing for her is huge, especially for like a family like ours, and kind of what they're doing to try to help her see is massive.
Is it working? Is it helpful?
Yeah, so we're seeing more and more technology. There was a company called eSight that she initially got when she was younger. Then what it does, it almost adds a camera very similar to kind of what you're seeing now, but it allows her to focus up and view items much closer, right? People would say low vision or anything like that. So it was still kind of somewhat new to technology, but I have to admit, for where it's going, it's great. And especially for her in college, all the technology and the augmentation, some of the other stuff that's happening, it's only helping. It's not hurting. So from a father, I love it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And they're doing a lot with neuromorphic computing, with having computers now with people that basically can't communicate. They're able to read brain thoughts now and to translate into language.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing if you look at some of the medical technology applications that are happening. and where a lot of the investment, with obviously Elon Musk is one of the people investing in that, but others too. And I think one of the competitors actually developed a artificial eye recently too that we could see.
Yep.
So it's doing the testing stage, but I think hopefully a lot of these things will be augmented so much that a lot of the any kind of disability will be basically made no longer be a disability in 15, 20 years from now.
And that would be fantastic. Well, we are actually at 2:58. I just want to leave a couple minutes. Alex, is there any other questions that popped up?
Yes, indeed they are.
I know we're kind of short on time.
There are a few questions. I know that we have talked a lot of different kind of topics and subjects that we touch, and indeed we have a few questions. I will address.
Let me ask real quick, Chuck and Tammy, how are you okay with time before I?
I'm fine.
Yeah, I can go a few more minutes, Aaron.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Alex.
Thank you. So I have one question from Alex. In your opinion, is there enough regulations for the usage of AI?
That's an open-ended question because we don't really understand it yet. So it's difficult to regulate, but there should be guardrails, and a lot of companies are putting them in. And there is definitely bias in the programming of it. So at least we've recognized some of those shortcomings early on. I think it's going to be very difficult to regulate. I think you're going to have parameters. But again, the European model, which they tend to be more punitive, they'll be probably first to do that. The U.S. Is much more open, where they'll do a lot more encouragement of you follow this kind of a process. But it could get to the point where there are a lot more risks if we don't put more guardrails. So I think it needs some regulation, but a question of how is open-ended.
I'm guessing it's going to take a similar path to what privacy has, right, with regards to the EU leading the way from a EU AI Act and the directives associated with that. And then, what happens in the US will be yet to be seen, but there'll definitely be some regs that come out. So I don't think, there's enough today. I'm sure there's going to be more. And then the question is how we're all going to manage to those regs.
Okay, we have another question from Alexander. He's another person. He's not the same with the first one, of course. At what point we can expect major companies such as Microsoft to switch to quantum computing?
Well, I think that'll be several years down the pipeline, but they're looking at it, and there's partnerships already with a lot of the bigger companies and industries. So I think it won't happen initially, but when it's here, I think they're all going to switch because the bottom line is they're in competition, and who has the most efficient, quickest, rapid technology, able to do the most is going to always be in demand. So the big ones will be the first adopters.
And I think we addressed all the questions that we had in the chat.
Well, that's great. Let me leave just a little bit. Chuck, would you like to kind of talk about your book? And I put a link on the top, so people can.
Thank you for the link. This just came out last week. It's my first book, and it's called Inside Cyber. I don't know if you can see it.
That's awesome.
Yep, we can.
It's how AI, 5G, IoT, and quantum computing will transform privacy and security. And it's available on Amazon, but it's a lot of what we just talked about here without, exception of IoT and 5G, which we could take another few hours to talk about. But really, it came out of my class thinking about, that we're moving in a new direction, and we have to understand these technologies, and particularly with regard to privacy, which, if there is any, we have to learn how to guard. And then the other thing was cybersecurity. So, it really focuses on these technologies in more depth, but it's not overly technical, so anyone could understand it. And there's also a lot of charts in there that had fun making. And also at the end of it, which is really what we're talking about, is risk management. And so the whole thematic part of the book is really looking at all these elements, these various technologies in part of your risk management portfolio, as a CISO would do, and a CTO would do, and a CIO needs to do now too. So I think for as we go forward, we can't ignore that these technologies combined and by themselves are going to have such impact on us that we have to be prepared. And hopefully this is a primer for people that want to know what's out there and what they should do and what to look at, and maybe the drive their own strategies and how to adopt them if they have a company or as an individual.
Great. Thank you, Chuck. Tammy,
Thank
would you
you.
like to do a little plug for your book too, please?
Sure. So I published my first book in April of this past year. So it's called Leading with Empathy and Grace. It is also available on Amazon. It is not a technology book. It's more focused on leadership. So if you're interested, feel free to check it out. Would appreciate that.
So what I'll do, everyone, when I'll send on the group, I'll put links to where you could get the books on Amazon, so you could download them and get them for you. So if there's no other questions, I guess we could stop from here. Chuck, Tammy, Alex, thank you so much again for all your help.
Absolutely.
This is fantastic. And again,